Welcome to Anews. I'm Umar Taslim, and you're watching Turkey's Diplomacy. The Middle East remains on the edge as Israel intensifies its offensive in Gaza, launching a major ground operation that has already claimed dozens of lives and displaced hundreds of thousands. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan has condemned Israel's attacks across Gaza, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and Iran, denouncing the targeting of peace talks in Qatar as a blatant violation of international law. President Erdoğan has labeled Israel's actions as a threat to regional stability and global order, likening Prime Minister Netanyahu's ideology to that of Adolf Hitler.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan spoke to journalists on his return flight from Qatar to Turkiye on Monday. President Erdoğan evaluated Turkey's foreign policy engagements and recent regional and global geopolitical developments.
Israel continues its reckless banditry in the region. Following attacks on Gaza, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and Iran, it now targets the peace negotiations delegation in Qatar. The fact that the negotiating delegation was the target of this treacherous attack is a blatant defiance of the international system and law. This despicable attack is a flagrant violation of the sovereignty of an independent and peace-loving country. It once again exposes the extent to which Israel's occupier and terrorist mindset has reached. The entire world now sees that Israel poses a clear threat to the international order.
The Turkish leader accused Israel of serving a perverse ideology rather than a religion, denouncing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his administration as a murder network and likening his ideology to that of Adolf Hitler.
Israel serves a perverse ideology, not a religion. Netanyahu and his gang are only telling the world the fabricated tales of Zionism. The UN Charter mandates the territorial integrity of states, sovereign equality, and the non-change of their borders by force. Therefore, scenarios created with the concept of the Promised Land are legally invalid and devoid of legitimacy. Those who govern Israel are nothing more than a murder network that has transformed its own radical understanding into a fascist ideology. In this respect, Netanyahu is practically ideologically related to Hitler. He possesses such a characteristic. Just as Hitler, influenced by the progress he made, failed to foresee the defeat that awaited him, Netanyahu will suffer the same ultimate fate.
The Turkish president also reaffirmed Turkey's support for Syria's territorial integrity, stressing the importance of unity and solidarity in the country.
It is undoubtedly our greatest desire to achieve unity and solidarity in Syria, and for lasting peace to prevail in every corner of the country. To this end, we continue to stand with the Syrian people. The pursuit of integration between the Syrian Democratic Forces and the Damascus government is a significant step towards Syria's territorial integrity. Occasionally, provocations arise to prevent Syria from becoming united. From the south, Israel is pressuring Syria and trying to wear it down. They are trying to gain something from there through a divide-and-rule mentality. Despite all this, an administration that prioritizes embracing all is currently in power in Syria. We absolutely cannot leave Syria alone here.
He also addressed Libya, emphasizing the need for constructive dialogue between eastern and western regions and the preservation of the country's sovereignty and political unity.
We believe that a constructive dialogue must be established between East and West in Libya. We want Libya's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political unity to be preserved. We are taking steps in line with these goals. From the beginning of the process, we have supported the legitimate Tripoli government. However, recent policies have evolved towards opening diplomatic channels not only to Tripoli but also to eastern Libya. This is a reflection of our multifaceted diplomatic efforts, our country's regional vision, and its aim to achieve peace. We expect the political process in Libya to advance through fair, credible, and transparent elections.
Welcome back to the program. Anews editor Mustafa Kocakanar. Welcome to today's episode of Turkey's Diplomacy.
Thanks for having me, Omar.
Mustafa, let's start with President Erdoğan's statements. He made some statements to journalists on his return flight from Qatar to the Turkish capital, Ankara. Mustafa, firstly, I'll start with Turkey's solidarity, the message that the Turkish president took to Qatar in the wake of the attacks, the Israeli attacks in Doha. Tell me more about those messages, Mustafa. How did the Turkish president condemn those Israeli attacks?
We know that on Monday, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan participated in the Arab Islamic Summit in Qatar, and many leaders from Arab and Islamic countries gathered in Qatar's capital, Doha, to show their solidarity with this Gulf country after the deadly Israeli strike. As you know, last week, Israeli security forces launched air strike in Doha with the aim of eliminating Hamas negotiators, and President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan harshly criticized Israel's attacks on peace negotiators. Erdoğan said that Israel is blatantly violating international law norms and Qatar's political sovereignty. And it is clearly showing that Turkey's strong support for Qatar is yielding positive results in terms of giving a joint response to Israel's military aggression in the region. Recently, we know that Turkish Communications Director Burhanettin Duran also made important statements about Israel's expansionist geopolitical agenda in the Middle East. All Turkish decision makers are accusing Israel of putting regional security at risk, because we know that Israel is not only taking aim at Palestinians living in the occupied territories, they are also targeting other countries in the Middle East. They are regularly targeting Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, and they have recently taken aim at Qatar's political sovereignty and national security. And all Arab and Muslim countries reiterated their determination to deal with the security challenges in the Middle East posed by the Israeli security forces. I think that all countries should unite against Israel's military campaign, because Israel is always taking military steps to realize its so-called national security demands in the region. I think that all regional countries should speak the language that will Israel understand.
Mustafa, also, Erdogan mentioned the latest Israeli attacks as well in the occupied Gaza Strip. Now we know that Israeli forces have asked people to evacuate. Well, that's not evacuation, that's forcibly displacing the Palestinians to other parts in the occupied Gaza Strip. How are you looking at this, Mustafa? How are you looking at these statements from the Turkish president? Because he said that he made comparisons to Adolf Hitler. He said that the policy that Netanyahu is following right now at the same time is similar to what Hitler did as well. Now, Mustafa, tell me more about these statements, and also how has Turkey reacted to the latest attacks that we saw, which started 2 days ago in Gaza City? Tell me more about that.
Israeli security forces have been recently intensifying their military aggression in the Gaza Strip with the aim of occupying Gaza City. And yesterday, President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan harshly criticized Benjamin Netanyahu and his war cabinet's decision to deepen the military aggression in the occupied Palestinian territory, Gaza Strip. And Erdoğan likened Netanyahu's ideology to Adolf Hitler. And we know that under the Adolf Hitler leadership, Nazi Germany murdered thousands of Jews, and it is being accepted as a genocide. And right now, international community is accusing Israel of committing war crimes and crimes against humanity in the Gaza Strip. On the other hand, we know that Israel is facing genocide accusations from the international community. And since the very beginning of the crisis, Turkey has been always trying to increase international awareness about Israel's ethnic cleansing policies and genocidal actions in the region. And I think that Turkey's diplomatic actions are yielding positive results in terms of recognizing the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people living in the region, because we know that pro-Palestinian movement is gaining momentum worldwide right now. And next week, many world leaders will gather in New York to participate in the United Nations General Assembly meeting. And many Western countries, France in particular, are set to recognize the Palestinian statehood. Yes, recognition will help Palestinian people uphold their historical rights, but on the ground, I think we have to see some concrete steps and coercive measures from the Western countries if we want to put an end to Israel's military aggression in the region. As you know, Turkey has already cut its trade activities with Israel, and Turkish decision makers have been always calling for international arms embargo on Israel. I think that next week, Turkish decision makers, President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan and Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan in particular, will meet with their counterparts from worldwide, and I think they will discuss the possible steps with the aim of putting an end to Israel military aggression in the region. I hope that international community will take Turkey's security demands into the consideration, and we will be able to see peace and stability in the Middle East. The bottom line is that Palestinian people deserve to live in their homeland with dignity and peace.
Mustafa, also, you know, we all know what's been happening in Syria over the past few months. After the regime change, of course, Bashar al-Assad was kicked out of the country. Ahmad al-Sharaa is now the new president. There have been many developments, and one of the most important developments out of all those have been the issue of terrorism. Now, Erdogan has spoken about the SDF and the SDF's integration into the Syrian army. What is the latest that we know about the SDF and its integration? And secondly, Ahmad al-Sharaa was also present in Qatar at the Arab Islamic Summit. How is he looking at the Israeli advances right now?
Omar, as you know, geopolitical landscape totally changed in Syria last December as the country's long-time ruling Assad family fled to Russia. And since then, new government in Damascus has been taking important steps to normalize the political situation in the war-torn country. And as you mentioned, on the sidelines of the Arab Islamic Summit in Qatar, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan met with his Syrian counterpart, Ahmed al-Sharaa. Both leaders discussed all aspects of bilateral relationships between Turkey and Syria, exchanging views on the latest geopolitical developments in the Middle East. We know that Turkey has been always reiterating its strong support for Syria's unitary structure, political stability, economic prosperity, national sovereignty, and territorial integrity. And right now, PKK terror groups, Syrian offshoot, PYD, YPG, I think is posing a huge threat to Syria's national security and territorial integrity. We know that PYD, YPG terrorists are trying to establish a separate political structure in the northern part of the country. And as you know, Turkish military forces conducted several counter-terrorism operations in northern Syria with the aim of eliminating terror threat in the region. And as you know, in March, new government in Damascus also reached an agreement with PYD, YPG dominated Syrian democratic forces. We know that United States is still strongly supporting SDF in the region, and Turkey is always claiming that one terror group cannot be defeated by using another one. Under the Obama administration, we know that United States collaborated with the PYD, YPG terrorist forces to eradicate the Daesh terror threat. And since then, they are still giving their support for PYD, YPG terrorist forces. And it is clearly poisoning the bilateral relationships between Ankara and Washington. Next week, maybe President Erdogan will meet with his American counterpart, Donald Trump. I think that Turkish and American decision makers will exchange views on the latest steps in terms of integrating PYD, YPG into the Syrian military forces. But I think that yesterday Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan also signaled a message to PYD-YPG, and President Erdoğan reiterated every opportunity that those who turn their faces to Ankara and Damascus will prevail, but those who seek new foreign patrons will fail. I think that it is clearly sending a message to PYD-YPG, and there are also some rumors about the upcoming military operations against PYD-YPG. They are claiming that Syrian security forces are preparing for new counter-terrorism operations in the northern part of the country. I think that if PYD-YPG will try to establish a separate political structure in the northern part of the country, I think that Turkish military forces will be compelled to pursue another counter-terrorism operations in the region with the aim of not only protecting Turkey's border security, but also ensuring Syria's territorial integrity.
Musa, we've been talking about attacks, terrorism in Syria. Tell me about Turkey's terror-free initiative, the terror-free initiative in Turkey. Tell me, at what stage is this initiative, and how is this progressing? How has it progressed over the past few months? Now, we know that this commission was meeting to decide what steps to take next, because we saw earlier this year, a few months ago, we saw how the terrorist group in Iraq laid down its weapons. There was a event, I wouldn't call it a ceremony, it was an event to mark the disarmament of the PKK terror group. At what stage is Turkey's initiative at this point, Mustafa?
Omar, as you know, last year Turkey's opposition nationalist movement party leader Devlet Bahçeli proposed a terror-free Turkey initiative, and since then both the ruling AK Party and opposition parties have been taking important steps to realize the terror-free Turkey initiative. And this year in February, PKK's jailed ringleader Abdullah Öcalan urged the separatist terror group to lay down their weapons and dissolve itself. And we know that PKK has already decided to dissolve itself and lay down their weapons. And in June, some PKK terrorists laid down their weapons in northern Iraq's Süleymaniye province. And Turkish parliament also created a new mechanism and commission to monitor the latest developments about the dissolution of the PKK terror group and disarmament of the separatist terrorist organization. Turkish decision makers have been always praising the important steps taken to realize the terror-free Turkey initiative. And right now, both political parties and Turkish security forces have been meticulously following the latest developments about the disarmament process of the PKK terror group. But personally, I think that terror-free Turkey also means terror-free region, because we know that PKK is not only targeting Turkey's political stability and national security. The terror group is also posing a huge threat to both Iraq's and Syria's political stability and national security and territorial integrity. They are still active in northern parts of Iraq and Syria, and within this context, Turkey has been always expecting some concrete steps from both Baghdad and Damascus to ensure the regional stability in the Middle East. I think that cooperation and collaboration among these three countries will yield positive results in terms of eliminating the terror threat in the region.
Mustafa, Erdoğan also touched upon Libya's national security, saying that the East and the West, there should be a dialogue between the two sides. Obviously, we know how Libya is being ruled at this point. There's an official government, there's an unofficial government as well. Tell me, why is Libya so important for Turkey at this point? Because over the past few years, we've seen how there were issues in the Eastern Mediterranean as well. There's Egypt involved as well when we talk about offshore exploration as well. There's Egypt, there's Greece, there's so many different countries who are involved. Why is Libya so important for Turkey at this point?
Umar, there was a civil war in Libya, and since the very beginning of the crisis in the country, we know that Turkey has been supporting Tripoli-based and United Nations recognized government. And in 2019, Turkey signed a maritime deal with Libya, and this deal totally changed the geopolitical structure in the Eastern Mediterranean. We know that Turkey has been always calling for fair sharing of natural resources located in the Eastern Mediterranean. Within this context, Turkey has been always calling for good relationships with all regional stakeholders. And within this context, in August, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan welcomed both Italy's Prime Minister and Libya's Premier to Istanbul to discuss the possible steps to reach peace and stability in the region. And right now, we know that Turkish officials are also engaging with the Khalifa Haftar, and he is controlling the eastern part of the country. Turkish National Intelligence Chief Ibrahim Kalın met with Haftar to discuss the latest security situation in the North African country. And yesterday, President Erdoğan reiterated Turkey's strong support for Tripoli-based government, but he also called for constructive dialogue between East and West Libya, and it is clearly showing that Turkey is trying to ensure political stability, economic prosperity, and national unity among all Libyan fractions. I think that Turkey's diplomatic support will help Libya reach peace and national stability. I hope that Turkey's strong support for Libya will yield positive results in terms of sharing the natural resources in the region. But there are also other factors in the Eastern Mediterranean. We have to take Greece and Greek Cypriot administration into the consideration. Yes, Turkey is always calling for fair sharing of natural resources, but Greece and Greek Cypriot administration are always pursuing a maximalist approach in the region. Turkish decision makers always reiterate that Turkey wants good neighborly relationships with Greece, but it doesn't mean that Turkey will allow any fait accompli in the Eastern Mediterranean.
Mustafa, thank you for that analysis. I'll be right back with you.
Thank you, man.
Israeli forces have ordered thousands of residents to evacuate Gaza City as a ground offensive intensifies following weeks of heavy bombardment that have destroyed homes and escalated the humanitarian crisis.
Israel launched its long-threatened ground operation into Gaza City on Tuesday, declaring Gaza is burning. That's as a UN inquiry found Israel has committed genocide in Gaza, incited by top Israeli officials, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel called the accusations scandalous. It has ordered hundreds of thousands of residents of Gaza City to flee. Many have spoken in recent days of having nowhere to go, of reaching overcrowded, unsafe camps and having to turn back. In recent weeks, the Israeli military has levelled buildings in the suburbs, including high-rise towers. But residents said on Tuesday bombardment of the city had ramped up dramatically, with heavier explosions destroying dozens of homes and naval boats joining tanks and planes in the bombardment. Abul Abd Zakut said his cousin was cut in half by a concrete block. They don't know how to retrieve her remains, he said.
What did the children do for us to find a head here and a leg there? A body that's been thrown 20 metres? We've been bringing them out since 3 in the morning.
We took out many, many martyrs and injuries. Rescuer Bashir Hajjaj says. It was difficult to reach the place because of the shelling. Israel says the aim is to dismantle Hamas as a political and armed organisation. An Israeli military official said ground troops were moving towards the centre of Gaza City, and that the number of soldiers would rise in the coming days to confront up to 3,000 Hamas combatants Israeli forces say are still there.
Today we witness in real time how the promise of never again is broken and tested in the eyes of the world.
The UN Commission of Inquiry's genocide report is the strongest UN finding to date. But the body is independent and doesn't officially speak for the United Nations. It cited as examples the scale of the killings, Israel's blocking of aid, forced displacement of Palestinians, and the destruction of a fertility clinic. Commission Chair Navi Pillay.
The ongoing genocide in Gaza is a moral outrage and a legal emergency. Member States must act now.
A Genocide Scholars Association and rights groups have reached the same conclusion.
Welcome back to the program. Joining us now from the French capital is Dr. Abdenour Toumi, a Mideast political analyst. Dr. Toumi, welcome to the program.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on the program.
Dr. Toumi, let's start with the latest developments from the occupied Gaza Strip. We now know that the Israeli forces have begun a ground incursion of the occupied Gaza Strip. Gaza City comes first and then the other enclaves. Tell me about the latest developments. How are you viewing these ground operations?
Actually, yeah, I mean, after now nearly 2 years and the ongoing scorched earth policy and the carnage that have been going on, and of course, I mean, causing a, an indescribable situation for the Palestinians in Gaza Strip. Now, but the main question now, how far can he go? I mean, by the Israeli premier, I mean, by the way, who is under ICC arrest warrants, I mean, with his former defense minister, particularly following the report of the UN Commission that it is, in fact, now has confirmed that it is a genocide that is taking place. So I believe there is no more time for excuses as the evidence now of Israel's genocide in Gaza Strip. And it's a challenge now for the international community. And this, I mean, they have no excuses. I mean, all the members, the UN members, to say, okay, I mean, we didn't know. I mean, even though, to be fair to them, I mean, there are now, like, strong voices are speaking up and saying enough is enough. So as a result, and now those UN members, and now they have also the possibility, the legal tools to move and stop this genocide. I mean, by that, I mean, they can go for the uniting for peace resolution. I mean, actually, by the way, we are just days from the 80 sessions of the UN General Assembly, and that will have, I mean, they have to sit for an emergency special session and enhance these principles. So now it's, I mean, I won't say it's the ball. I mean, the responsibility now is in the hands of the international security, international community, and particularly at the UN Security Council.
Dr. Toumi, now the Lancet study, it's a scientific journal, it has said that the deaths, the number of people killed in the occupied Gaza Strip does not stand at 65,000. It's actually 680,000 people. This is more than 500,000 people who have been killed in the occupied Gaza Strip since the war began on October the 7th. How are you evaluating these reports? This is not normal because according to the government, the Palestinian Health Ministry, I should say, it has not taken account the deaths from famine, from starvation, of people who have been stuck under the rubble of the buildings that have been bombed by Israel. Obviously, we know the situation of the occupied Gaza Strip. There's nothing there. It's full of rubble. How are you evaluating these reports, Dr. Abdunur Toumi? 680,000 people have been killed in the occupied Gaza Strip.
I mean, it's a fair question, and this question should be asked to anyone who has a heart and who watches the news and come in from Gaza. And again, as I said, it's now about nearly 2 years of these scorched earth policy. And I mean it. I mean, it's a distraction. I mean, when I saw these apocalyptic images, I mean, it's unbelievable. But again, I mean, of course, I mean, the Lancet, it's a credible source and a trustworthy people, so that there is actually another article, I mean, was last week in The Guardian, and this was actually quoted the former IDF chief of staff, and that there were around 300,000. So there are now between 600 and 300,000. I mean, there is a fair number that could between these numbers. I mean, because I mean, these 65,000 of martyrs and around 100,000 of injured. I mean, it is nothing what we have been watching and reading in the fair news outlets. So now it's again, as I said, it's enough is enough, and then we still have the right and the legitimacy to ask a legitimate question, and how far these again Israeli premier can go in his carnage on the Palestinians. And now, I mean, the question is, it's not about Gaza. I mean, sure, I mean, his main goal, as quote unquote, as he said, or he has been, was telling the news media, I mean, the Western media and politicians that his, I mean, the main goal is to go and eradicate Hamas. But there is no Hamas in the West Bank. And the West Bank is facing the same fate like their brothers and sisters. The Palestinian people are facing the same fate like their brothers and sisters in Gaza Strip. I mean, there is no Hamas in occupied Al-Quds al-Sharif. And we saw what happened just 2 or 3 days ago following the visit of the U.S. Secretary of State and the U.S. ambassador. I mean, with the Israeli premier, and how they were, like, you know, proudly praying and again in that tunnel, and look again digging under the Al-Aqsa mosque. So again, now it's up to the international community to step up and to again to act.
Dr. Toumi, we can talk about these numbers, right? But there will be supporters of Israel who have denied the genocide, who have denied the official figures, who have denied the state of Palestine, who have denied the existence of the Palestinians. Now, their own commander, former IDF chief Herzi Alevi, has confirmed that more than 200,000 Palestinians were killed or injured in the war in Gaza. And not once in the course of the conflict were military operations inhibited by legal advice. What's wrong with the Israeli mindset?
I mean, you said it, and the key word is denied. And I mean, those people, they continue in their state of denial. And meaning by that, actually, they don't recognize a Palestinian identity. So it's there. I mean, they don't know. I mean, they don't recognize people called Palestinians and a land called Palestine. So, and it's clear, and we saw in their statement, actually now, like, you know, actually not a daring, but an audacity to challenge the people who are, I mean, the righteous in the world, who are challenging those, I mean, these carnage and now this genocide, and by still blaming Hamas. I mean, as if this equation of the conflict, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that started 2 years ago on October 7. I mean, again, I mean, ignoring all those 75 years of occupation, I mean, harsh occupation and acculturation processes that have been going on the Palestinians. I mean, as I said, I mean, those people, they don't look at, I mean, first of all, I mean, they don't recognize the Palestinians at all. And then when you hear such, again, unbelievable when I heard that coming from the mouth of the U.S. Secretary of State, I mean, using this, again, this word animal, I mean, describing the Palestinian resistance, I mean, it says it all. And this is that how they look down to the Palestinian people.
Dr. Toomey, Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, was in Tel Aviv, and then yesterday he visited the Qatari capital. He met with the Emir and pledged unwavering support for the Qataris. Why now? That's the question. Why is the U.S. coming to help the Qataris at this point? It could have done that before the Israeli strike.
I mean, why now? I mean, this is because he doesn't have any answer. I mean, he has to say something. So, but again, I mean, this zigzag diplomacy of the U.S. administration. And now when it comes to its allies, and it's the most, I mean, trustworthy ally in the region, actually, to some extent. I mean, Qatar was described in the former administration, in Biden administration, that one of allies that could have the status of NATO member allies. So it is very strong and very powerful. But, you know, we saw what happened. And this is, again, it comes or it goes or it fits with the perception of this administration, and that is, I mean, again, heavily influenced by the Zionist lobby in Washington, D.C., and how they look to the Arabs. So it is, again, it is sad, but this is the reality. But just, I mean, a quick point. This is not, I mean, it is an act of aggression against a sovereign country. And this is not for the first time. I mean, we, unfortunately, people in the region forget. And it happened like 40 years ago. I mean, this has happened on Tunisian, Tunisian soil. And Tunisia was illegally and cowardly aggressed by the IDF then in 1985. And then we saw the statement actually just after the final statement of the Arab, Extraordinary Arab League, Islamic and Arab League and Arabs meeting in Doha like 2 days ago. I mean, the Israeli premier again took the micro and went to the cameras and challenging all of them. I said, okay, I'm not going to stop and I'm going anywhere. I mean, so I can hit any country in the region. And this is why now it's not a question of, we are not in that classic Arab-Israeli conflict. Now we are in the region, is in a serious conflict and war with an entity that doesn't look for peace and security and stability in the region.
Dr. Toomey, just before I let you go, I want to ask you, what's your view on the current ceasefire negotiations? Because the Qatari government has said it will not withdraw from those negotiations. And I was talking to Dr. Mehmet Çelik as well yesterday, the editorial coordinator of Daily Sabah. He said it's not necessary that Qatar may be negotiating these talks. It is facilitating, but still, do you think that it's going to proceed with much more caution from this point onwards?
I mean, when we saw what happened last week, I mean, when you attempt, actually, you go to kill your indirect partner in the negotiation table, and then you strike cowardly the house of the host, actually the facilitator, and knowing that Qatar, I mean, has been active with its, again, active peace and mediator diplomacy, and played a major role in this equation between Israel and the Palestinian resistance in this indirect negotiation. But we know from day one that the Israeli premier, he doesn't want negotiations. He doesn't want solutions. By the way, he doesn't want solutions. I mean, he loves to negotiate and to talk. But when he is challenged, when he is cornered, and he goes and bomb or kill the negotiator. And we saw what happened last year with Shahid Ismail Haniyeh, and then just a month later with the leader of Hezbollah, Shahid Nasrallah. So this is it. I mean, how do you negotiate with someone who wants to kill you? And this brings us to, again, to my question. My question is, how far can he go, and who can stop him?
Dr. Abdunur Toumi, it was a pleasure listening to your analysis. Thank you so much for joining us on Turkey's Diplomacy.
Thank you.
Anews editor Mustafa Kocakanar, thank you so much for your analysis as well and for being with us in the studios.
Thank you, Mark.
That brings us to the end of our program. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.